We're going to give you a little tutorial on working with the Flexnote. Just the basics. When we first load Flexnote, we're going to have the cursor focus here in the note title. So we can go ahead and manually type a note title. And as we do this for a few notes, the browser is going to remember note titles we've used in the past and pre-populate this into a little list that we can just click from. Right underneath the title bar is a place where we can update the service date if we so desire. When we click into the note itself, we're going to be entering the rich text editor where we can directly update the narrative. You can see this is all blank, and we'll change that in a second. When we click into the rich text editor, we're entering what we call note editing mode. And when we do that, a few things about the interface will change. So when I do that, you can see that there's a blue vertical strip here. That's a reminder that I'm in note editing mode, and this is where my focus is. Here in the multi-purpose panel on the right side, I've activated the note editing tool set. I'm going to do that one more time. I'm in the title bar. You can see that this is deactivated and there's no blue vertical stripe. And here I'm clicking into the rich text editor, vertical stripe, note editing tool set. In the note editing tool set, I've got access to my macros. I've got access to prior notes to help me fill in this note with some prior content very quickly if I so desire. And I've also got access in the future. I'll have access to chart components from our chart summary. Now, one thing that you'll notice here in the macro tab is that I don't have a macro set. You'll always want to make sure that you're working with the macro set. So the first thing we're going to do is create a macro set, and we'll call it My Macros. And you can see there are no macros in the macro set. Adding a macro is very easy. Here in the rich text editor, I select the text that I want for my macro. I click the Add Macro button, and it's added to my macro list. Now, this is organized in the My Macros macro set. So if I'm using a different macro set, I won't see this macro. To use this macro in my note, I just click on the macro, and it inserts it into the note. You can see that as I click and click, it continues to insert this macro. Macros can be simple like this, or of course they can be as complicated as an entire note, which I'll show you in a second. Let's say my practice created a whole bunch of note templates as macros that they really liked and saved them in a macro set. Well, macro sets can be imported and exported. So let's say they exported it, share that file with me. I'm going to go ahead and import the file that they sent. Let's say it's called Best Practice Note Macros. I identify it, I click the Open button, and you can see that Best Practice Note Macros is loaded up here with these two note macros. I'm going to go ahead and insert this initial HNP General Medicine Basic macro. This one contains a comprehensive initial history and physical. Let's say as the rendering practitioner, for some reason, I really want to have the order of these sections be a little different. I'd like to have my social history appear before my family history. So I can just directly edit that in my note. I can select all of this text as if it's one big macro, and I can add it as a new macro to this list. And of course, it gives me this crazy name here, but that's okay. I can rename it, and I can say My Custom Initial H&P, so that next time I want to use this on a patient, I just click on this macro, and it inserts my updated H&P with a social history and family history flopped around the way that I wanted. For each of these individual fields, we have a completely different mode for the multi-purpose panel. It's important to keep in mind that the note editing toolset is available when you're in note editing mode. But when you click on a field, the note editing toolset flips into field editing toolset. Now you're in field editing mode. It's like you're zoomed into the specific field. So you've got access to macros and history, but all of those things only apply to the field in question. So for instance, this macro list here is very different than this macro list here for this other field. You'll know you're in field editing mode because you've got a yellow field editing tool set here, and you've got a yellow vertical stripe. Lots more on these concepts in later videos.